This message is prohibited.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Taboo Talks. Yeah, on this episode we got City here, awesome friend. You also go by Wabi Sabi. So what I like to do is I like to give everybody like an introduction, and then you can fill in the holes.
All right.
So City here is an amazing person. Your alias is Wabi Sabi, and I guess I'll get into what Wabi Sabi does. So not to be mistaken by wasabi.
Oh, yes.
Wabi Sabi is not a food, and so everything that I know about you. So Wabi Sabi means to find the perfect in the imperfection, and that translates to a lot of things that you're doing. And a lot of that is a movement that you've started called Damn You're Beautiful, and then your workshops that I really enjoy. I really do enjoy them, like no lie.
Yay.
I'm not trying to like, cookie butter you up. There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really like your workshops. And so the workshops, so Wabi Sabi puts on these workshops, as well as you do blog posts from time to time, I'm assuming. And yeah, and speaking of the workshops, I really like, well, I've only been to 2, so I really like the recent 2 that I've been to.
It's okay. There's only been 5, so you've been to almost half.
Yeah, well, tell us about Damn You're Beautiful, because I think that's a really good movement to talk about.
Okay, for sure. So, I mean, I guess I can't talk about the movement unless I talk about what Wabi Sabi is. So
Okay.
Is that cool if I
Yeah,
just start from the
Yeah,
beginning?
do your thing.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so you kind of touched a little bit on like what like the kind of work that I do I guess in the community, or like just for people or for myself. So I think with Wabi Sabi, it's actually my blog and my entity online. And so what you said, yes, Wabi Sabi is finding perfection in the imperfection, and that really is my motto in life, where how I view life and how I treat people and how I treat myself, and it's just kind of a way that I carry myself through like every parts of my life. And so in 2018, in the summer of 2018, I started the blog Wabi Sabi, and it really was a way for me to really express myself and find connections with other people who were also going through tough times as me, like things that I was struggling with, things that I was triumphing over, things that I have achieved. So it really just, I started writing a lot of blog posts about just like myself and my true self, and trying to be authentic and hoping that other people can relate and connect with me. Because I think for me, I've always just felt so alone in the things that I've done, and that I really wanted to bring my true self out, and that was really my way of doing it. And it was really a way to help myself heal and help others heal in the process, and give people a space to also be authentic and to accept who they are for whatever they are, whoever they are.
Okay.
And so with the blog, I started the Damn You're Beautiful movement a few months later, and that movement is really like this sign that says damn you're beautiful, and I really just like take it out into different places in the community, or with certain people, different like places and organizations, like wherever I meet, I just like, hey, you want to take a picture with this, blah blah blah. So it's really just like a positive movement to really encourage each individual woman and girl to embrace their own unique beauty, and to really accept themselves for who they are, because there's not just one definition of beauty, or whatever society puts it out to be. And so once a woman or a girl can do that for themselves, then they can continue on to encourage other women to accept themselves for who they are, like their own unique beauty, like on the inside and out. And this movement really is to just uplift and like raise positive vibrations for like all the females here, or whoever identifies as being female. And like this movement hasn't really it's not just touching like women and girls, or female identifying people. It really is touching like a lot of men too, because I know that a lot of men have been attending my workshops too, and some are friends and some are men that just came, and I'm very surprised, and I feel like this isn't just for women too, and it speaks to men too. Maybe to a side that some men want to hone their energy towards that maybe they haven't been before. So it's been really good.
Yeah. And yesterday was amazing.
Yes.
We had a really good discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And for the people that weren't there, there was an amazing interaction that happened. And what happened was that a new person
Mm-hmm.
came in off the street. They saw us at the shop, Mai's Floral Shop. I guess we'll do a quick plug for that too. So where we were having it was Mai's Floral Shop. That's on Snelling and I think it was Thomas. Snelling, and it's off Snelling and Thomas. If you don't know where Thomas is, it's literally 3 blocks north from University in Snelling. So it's right in that area. And anyways, there's this new person that came in, and she came in because like she just wanted to check it out, and she actually stayed for the whole time, which was really amazing. Because like most people, because I've done that a lot. Like I've just gone to events like just off the street, and sometimes I just leave early and just like if I'm not feeling it. But like it was really cool that she ended up staying. And our discussion was great. What were we talking about yesterday? We were talking about finding our authentic self. Or
outside of labels
Yeah.
and your identities and the expectations that are put on you, and like who you like finding who you really are outside of those things that supposedly defines you in society.
Yeah. And speaking of which, it's it's the month of February, and Valentine's Day is coming up next Friday. And so everybody's like, it hasn't really started yet, but it's definitely gonna come up. People are gonna be posting like, I've already seen some people post up like, oh yo, like, single for life, or like you don't need no man, or like, and so it ties really well with not the most recent one, but the one right before this one, which was about self-love. And like what do you remember from that workshop? Like I actually want to get your like thoughts about like how it went for you, like.
So you're talking about the one in January?
Yeah, the January one.
Finding yourself after a breakup, right?
Yeah,
that one?
yeah.
And how did I feel about it, you said?
Yeah, like what was your like experience with that?
Experiences with the event?
Yeah.
Or okay. I feel like for me, like every workshop, I feel like I always gain something from every workshop. And for me, for that particular workshop and particular topic, I think it was very special to me because I think it was, after like going, the title is going or finding yourself after a breakup, and that was one that I was pondering on whether to do, because I feel like sometimes when you feel like, oh, like I'm not even completely over this breakup, how can I talk about healing or talk about getting over it if I'm not over it? But I think for me, I always try to see it as, it's okay to help others even if you're not like fully recovered from it, though you are trying and you are healing and making steps, but doesn't mean that you're not good enough to not talk about those things, because if you are going through it too, then other people are too. And I feel like every time that I do a certain workshop, depending on the specific topic, like I feel like I always find some sort of healing from that topic, and like I always like gain something different too, and something new, and just talking about it and just being real with people on the things that you're going through, even as a facilitator, like saying that you are also going through it, right? It's so real, like it's so authentic. Like if you go to like a professional event and like you are like the facilitator, you got to be like, oh, I got to be perfect, I got to make sure I speak right, I got I got to make sure I present myself in the best way. And that's why for me, like I like very informal spaces when I do workshops. Like I want to make sure that people can smile and laugh and cry and just like speak their minds, and like they don't have to put up a formal facade or like like a professional facade. For me, I'm all about connecting with people deeply, and it's always about that. So like, and it's about like expressing how you truly feel. And so yeah, with that specific workshop, I feel like it was really healing, because even though like, you know, there's always a fear of when people want to share like certain personal stories, but you know, as long as it gets them to think about it within themselves, even if they're not sharing it, I feel like people gain something as well. And for me, when the workshop itself, like, I always find it great when I know that people get something out of it.
Right.
That's what makes me feel good, you know, when I know that it affects people in a positive way.
Yeah, totally. You know, you're trying to interact people without their masks on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you do that enough in society. Why not just have one space where you can just take it off for like 2 hours, you know?
For sure. And at that time, we what I really strongly remember, there was an individual who had a really deep story to tell, but not to really focus on that point. Also, we talked about like things that we do to heal, and like that led to like self-love and things like that. And like, I really liked your definition of self-love. So could you explain it again? Because I don't really remember.
I don't even remember what I said, honestly.
What?
I don't even remember what I said about self-love. What do you remember from it? Because I'm like, what did I say?
Well, I remember saying...
I could feel it, because I don't really remember exactly what I said. Maybe I might miss the point. Like, what did I say?
I remember saying my piece about what I thought self-love was. And then you're like, yeah, totally, like... That's how I think about it too.
Oh, about the two? Like the two?
Yeah. Yeah, what do you... I just, like, want to get your full opinion on the spot. Because, like, you didn't really explain it that day about what you think about what self-love is. But, like, you just kind of, like, agreed. And you just kind of, like, put things together. So, like, what is, like, your official opinion at the moment? Like, your current form?
Yeah, for self-love, I feel like people like put that out on social media so much. And like, even when I was younger, like in high school and like early college, I'd be like, yeah, I need self-love. Like, oh yeah, self-care. Like, this is like what self-love and self-care means. And then when I do it, it doesn't feel like I'm taking care of myself, you know? Like, I feel like there's just this like super like I don't even know what the word is, like
superficial.
It's like, yeah, superficial, or like super, like, it's, you know how it's like society puts something out like how it's supposed to be, but it's not that way at all, you know? Like, people have this like idea of self-love through social media, and like they think like it's about like, you know, being by your, like, I don't know, I can't really explain it, but it's not how you put it out on social media. That's what I say. That's what I want to say, that I feel like self-love really means like, really, I think the only thing I can think about is like what we were talking about, like forming a relationship with yourself and seeing yourself as two people, you know? So like, as how you treat your significant other, if you do have a significant other, you shouldn't worry about that until you can form that type of relationship with you and you know? And I started to embark on my self-love journey, I think, in 2017. And like, I literally like started to see myself as another person, like a person that could physically sit next to me, because I wanted to love her as much as I've been trying to give all this love to another person, like thinking like, wow, I haven't even given that to myself. And I see myself as like two, you know, in like, we've been taught like, oh, you are a half of another person, and if you meet another person, then y'all become whole. But that's really not true in my opinion, is that you know, you are whole, but then as you continue to grow up, you start splitting in two because of your disconnect with what people are teaching you, what you're being conditioned to be and do, that like, you start splitting yourself from your true self, and that's the person that you have to connect back to, which is the conditioned you, the you that you are now, the conditioned you, and the real you who is hiding inside of you. And so like, self-love is really to connect those two together again, you know? And I kind of see like the true self as like your child self, you know, and like the you that is like aware. And so that's really my definition of self-love, like to really connect them both and like form a really healthy and loving relationship as if that you are your own partner, because you are your own partner, you know. And you really have to like work on that. And like if you cannot build a healthy relationship with yourself, like you and you, then don't even think about like trying to bring another person into it, you know. So yeah, I don't know, like I feel like you just have to be okay with being by yourself, like truly being by yourself, not like, you know, people always say like, oh, self-love, self-care, and I'm gonna be by myself, and like those people are the ones that feel the loneliest, you know. But if you are by yourself and you love yourself, you should never feel alone. You know, that's not self-love. Like you should never feel alone being by yourself, because you should feel excited because you are with yourself, and you are not alone because you are with you. You know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've seen a lot of people like just say recently on my Facebook feed, just being like, yo, like self-love is overrated, and like you know, because like I do kind of feel that way, that like, you know, people are like, it's a trend, you know, like, oh, like self-love is a trend, and like what are your thoughts on that, particularly on like the woman experience?
I definitely think it's a trend. I was following it when I was younger. You know, we're like, oh, you want to be independent, because I think it is a trend, because I think people actually want it. You know, they want the idea of it. They want to love themselves, but they don't know how to. So what they see on social media is like, oh, I'm gonna try to grasp for that, you know, and like, and then people like over promote it so much to the point where there's no meaning to it, you know, like it's just a word. It's just a word, and people like see self-care and like, okay, whatever, like I just see that everywhere.
So I mean, do you think that self-love is like, or self-care does have meaning now, or what?
I think it's nothing to do with what you see, but how you feel about yourself. It's an individual journey, and like someone's self-love for themselves and like their own way of self-care could be way different than yours, you know. And there could be like general tips on how you can take care of yourself, but then like like I said, every person is different, and like their own journey of loving themselves is different, because everyone goes through different experiences as children, and as when they grow up, and like it's not like the same for people. Some people have different levels, like, oh, I love myself here, and then some people like, oh, I love myself here, and like everyone's at different levels, and you can't ever like measure your own process to another person. And so sometimes that's probably why it gets people like confused, like, you know, like, oh, that person must love themselves a lot because they're doing all this, but you can't do that, you know. You can't do that to yourself, because you both are not the same person, you know.
Yeah. So like, how do you go about that then? You know, like, so you're saying that like, okay, so you think that self-love is like this, obviously, so you agree with that it's like overrated at the current moment?
I think, I mean, for like, I think right now for me, I feel like it's not, because I think I feel like I know now, like to my knowledge, that I do have a better understanding of what really self-love is than how I used to as a younger me. Okay. So for me, I don't feel like it's overrated, because the things that I see now on my feed is very positive and very insightful. Like a lot of the quotes I see is like very true to me. Okay. So I don't think it's overrated, you know, for me.
Okay. Well, so your whole movement is obviously about damn you're beautiful, and obviously that speaks to about self-love as well. But like, what's your process? Like, what would you I mean, not what is your process, but like, what would you recommend about like tackling finding self-love? You know,
honestly, I say isolate yourself, but some people are so afraid to do that. It's the truth. You got to isolate yourself from everyone. Like, not like where you're like, you know, maybe it might Like I isolated, I think in 2017, like I literally like isolated myself from like everybody. And sometimes you kind of have to go through that lonely road to really find yourself, because like self-love means like you fully accept who you are, and what you look in the mirror, like you can smile at that person whether you're not even where you want to be, like physically or even mentally or emotionally. Like you can just still look in the mirror and just be like, damn, like I look good, or like I feel good, like that's what like when you've reached a level of like really like true self-love is when you can look at yourself in the mirror and just be like, dang, I look good. And even though you were in some wacky, I'm gonna swear though, wacky as hell or something, like you still be like, dang, I look good. And like going out and just being okay with looking like that, like, and then like not really worrying about how other people will see you, because that's really who your true self is, and you're like really accepting who that is, who you are. Then like that's what self-love is. It's not about like, self-care, like, massages or whatever. Like that's all right, but like that's just a surface level self-care. Like I like those things, that is self-care, but like to really like care and love yourself is really to like just not be afraid of being who you are, like when you're by yourself, and like bringing that out into like being around your family, being around the public, being around friends and stuff, like just being able to do that. um so okay, well, I forgot I lost my train of thought. Like I was trying to make a point, but I don't really remember what I was trying to say.
You were trying to say
Yeah,
something
go back
along
to the
the
question,
lines of
because
like,
I was trying to make a point, but I forgot.
yeah. So, well, you're making a point or a differentiation about surface level acts and like the intention of self-love.
Actually, can you restate your question? Maybe that would help me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So a question was like, what is it? Not what your personal process is, but like how do you attempt to find self-love?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so like for me, I believe that you really need to isolate yourself for a certain amount of time, like a healthy isolation,
Right.
For me, I think I did a really unhealthy isolation, but like, you probably don't need to go to the extent that I did, but like I think just isolating yourself for a certain amount of time to allow yourself to have your own thoughts come in, or like your own true self to come in, because when you're around people all the time, then like their thoughts and their ideas like influence you to act a certain way, make a certain decision, and like you might not even be wanting to do that, but then like because other people around you are saying, oh, it's such a good thing, then you do it.
Right.
So for me, and my self-love process is really to like isolate myself from people and really like reflect to myself, like, what is it that I want? How is it that I actually feel about these certain things, these certain situations, these certain people? What are my real thoughts? Without fearing the judgment from, a person right next to me, or like without feeling influenced that I have to act a certain way or think a certain way in order to not like to in order to like be fit in or like be accepted by them. And for me, like that was one of my biggest struggles as a kid. Like I always like wanted to fit in and wanted to like be with a group, and I always just did what they wanted because I grew up like the youngest person. So like if you don't agree with the older people, then you get bullied all the time. So like you just grow up like agreeing and wanting to be part of the group. That's how you survived. But then like as I grew up, I just felt so just depressed. I was just like really depressed like all my life, and so I just felt like, what is this disconnect? And really like going through the self-love journey since 2017 is really just to really discern my thoughts and my feelings and my wants from what my parents want for me, what my siblings want for me, what like the society that I live in wants for me, and what my Hmong community like wants for me. Like you, sometimes you're just driven to do things because people want it for you, but that's not being your authentic self. So you have to really become aware of who you really are outside of everyone else. That's really the main thing. And then after that, then it just comes self-love with just like different types of other self-love things, I guess, will come easier to you. But that really is the first thing that you have to embark on.
Yeah, I can also see people saying that, well, how can you even get to that point of self-love, because because like nobody can change another person besides himself, right? And so like how do you think that in order to reach that level of like self-love, you have to be able to not want to, or not have to be able to not be bothered about loving or having the affection of someone else?
So you mean like
Like, do
can we
people?
still like want someone else's love and also love ourselves? Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, can you self-love and
Want someone
want
else's love?
someone else's love at the same time? Let's start there, and then we can
Yeah.
go deeper.
I mean, like I'm just talking from my personal experience. Like in 20, like since 2017, like 3 years now, or not even 3 years yet. I mean, like I was embarking on like really isolating myself, and like I haven't been in a relationship since like the beginning of 2018, like, even maybe a little bit before that, because it wasn't clear either before that if I was actually in a relationship. But I feel like even though it's really rocky in the beginning when you want to focus on loving yourself, because I feel like we've been conditioned to love people more than yourself, like to always do more for others and the people you love more than yourself. And that's just for me, that's how I grew up, and I feel like a lot of people grow up that way too, especially women. And so like when you first start out wanting to love yourself, there's going to be so much thoughts that come from your mind, and that's going to be bombarding your mind, because you have been conditioned to be a certain way, to like always be seeking love from something external from you. So you're going to have to fight against those thoughts.
Yeah.
It's a fight. It's not going to be easy, or it's not going to be smooth to like really find who you are and the real voice in your mind, compared to like all the other voices that are speaking to you, like like maybe your parents' voice, your friend's voice, your significant other's voice, that is just all like in your mind. And you really gotta just fight through those things, and you're gonna want to still continue to seek love from other people. And I think it's a natural feeling for humans to want to be loved. I want to be loved. I think loving myself is not enough. Honestly, we're human beings. We're gonna want to be loved by other people, and I think that's what keeps us going. Like it's just like ingrained in human nature and like human beings, that we need to feel loved and we need to feel cared from by other people. And I don't, but it doesn't, for me, I don't think it has to be romantic, and I think that a lot of women, like, we get stuck into really toxic relationships because we want to seek love that we never received from like the people that we should have got love from. And so we try to seek that within our romantic relationships, trying to fill that. And that's something I had to go through too, like as a young person, when I was dating a lot, like I would like date someone and then like date someone after that, after I break up, just fall into the cycle of like trying to seek love from these men that I was dating, because I never like felt like I received that proper love from like my dad or my mom or like my brothers or my sisters. Like I just always felt really unloved by my family as a child. And as I grew up, and like that time when I was doing my self-love work, like I realized that's what I was doing, like going into relationship after relationship, because I was not getting that love that I wanted from my family. And that's when you become aware of that, then you really can't go back to being who you were before. Like you might make mistakes and like revert back sometimes, but you're so aware that you're just like, I already know what this is, and I know this isn't real love, like you just trying to seek love that you don't have. But once you like begin to build that love within yourself, and if you are grateful enough to have like the people in your life that are still there, that you want to seek love from, like try building good relationships with them, and then you will stop wanting to seek like that unhealthy love from people. And like when you receive the proper healthy love that you want, and it's not going to be perfect, but to know that you are loved already, then like that really like crave to want love or romantic love, because I believe that romantic love is such a false idea, that like people fall into, like romantic love. Like,
Yeah, you're gonna have to explain that one a little bit.
okay, you want
Like,
me to explain right now? Okay.
Yeah, like what do you mean by like fall into?
Romantic
Like, it's
love
like
is such a false idea.
Yeah. So you're basically saying that's a lie.
It kind of is, like, you know, like back when I was a young girl, like K dramas and stuff. Like, I feel like that shit is kind of unhealthy for a young girl's mind, because
Okay.
we believe that that's how a man should be, like, you know,
Mhm.
like that he's supposed to be real sweet and pull you in, and you know, stuff like that. Like,
Uh-huh.
it's so sweet, like that's so ideal, but like we have to remember that like that stuff, you know, it's not really like the truth of it all. Like, that's not how all men are. Like, we could watch it and enjoy it and love like the romantic, you know, idea of it, but just understand that that's not exactly how life is gonna be, like when you
Mhm.
actually get into a relationship. Like, there could be moments like that, but it's not gonna be like every part like how it is in the K dramas, you know.
Okay.
And for me, I feel like I was so wrapped up in like the romantic love, because that was like the love that was always promoted everywhere, like in movies and dramas. Like, this is the love that you want, romantic love, you know. Oh, this is the best love. Like, that's kind of like what they're promoting to young minds, like, this is what it is, you know. But they never really promote like familial love, like brother sister love. Like, those things aren't as promoted in the, you know, like friends and stuff like that. Yeah, it's kind of promoted, but I feel like people are more drawn to like romantic love.
Mhm.
And like, I feel like the truth of it all, like, you can't get romantic love until you find like some sort of like brotherhood or sisterhood with, like, you know, having like those healthy like connections with other people in your life, not just romantic, you know.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I just find like it's just a really unhealthy idea, where like it just like puts it into the minds of like young people that that's the only love that matters, you know. And that's how people get so wrapped up in like love, like romantic love, and they get so like their world tears down because they think that's like the one only love, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So let's okay, I feel that. That's similar to like one of my friends, right?
Mhm.
She's going through this type of relationship right now.
Mhm.
And basically it's basically like a novella. I don't know if you watch novellas.
Mhm.
I
Kinda
mean,
like soap opera,
yeah, it's like way like
dramatized.
yeah, like you think about like the craziest K drama you've seen, and like novellas are like way crazier. Like, it's crazy. People getting slapped and killed, and like because you know, wives are sleeping with their brothers and all that stuff, and like um basically she's like living a novella
Oh,
at the current
no.
moment, and it's just like, yo, like, why are you trying to be a novella right now? Like, what? You know,
Oh
you know
my
better.
gosh.
I know you know
Yeah,
better.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
why are you trying to live on a novella? It's just like, yo, girl, get like, you know. But on that note of like what the type of loves, like, you know, what do you think? So, you know, like self love. You said you have to treat it at like somebody, like as if you're somebody else. But like, what do you like? What to you, like, how would you define love? Like, what does it boil down to? Like the essence of love, like in general, and then we can tack on like, you know, brotherly love and sisterly love, or like romantic love, and
Mhm.
you know, friend love.
I feel like love, like the simple way to put it is like, when you love someone, like you would do things for them without like expecting something back, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you love someone, it's a feeling, and you can't really explain when you love someone, whether it's like your mom or like a significant other, a sister. Like, you just feel the love. Like, you can't really explain the love. Like, you can have the worst days with the person you love, and you can
Mm-hmm.
still love them. They could have put you through the worst shit, and you still love them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not about, sometimes it's not even, it is about action if you want to keep that relationship, right? But like, sometimes people can still love you and still hurt you, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So do you think that okay, I get what you're saying, and I think listeners and viewers are gonna agree. But like, do you think that when you love someone, you can stop loving someone?
I think the love may change, but I feel like you don't. I just feel like you just can't stop loving someone. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think once you've built a certain relationship with someone, like maybe that you can fall out of love with someone, but doesn't mean like you don't continue to have love for that person. Maybe the love has just changed. You know?
So you said something interesting. So like, fall out of love. Like, what does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, people use those phrases a lot. Like,
yeah.
oh, I love you, or like I've fallen in love with you. So like, versus I love you. You know, like, what's the difference there? I've fallen in love with you versus I love you.
You know,
I
you know, yeah, you're right. People use that a lot, and like even I haven't really even thought about what the difference is. But I feel like when people say like I'm in love with you, like that's like romantic. Like that's like when you really want to be, like when you decide to be with someone like as a significant other, like that's what it means. Like, because you would never say I'm in love with you, brother, or I'm in love with you, mom. You know, it's like more of like a romantic, like where like it's kind of like you two as two people like want to come together to like, you know, be together as romantic partners. And so when you say like, when we say like fall out of love, like even I don't know that, you know, like I don't understand why people fall out of love. Like I get really sad when I hear people who's been married for like 20-30 years and they like just, you know, they're not together anymore. It's like how can that happen, you know? How can you just fall out of love? So I don't think I have like I don't have personal experience or like much knowledge on that, but like what I can assume is like over the years maybe like that person could have changed, you know, or maybe they do love each other and maybe they just don't want to work it out, you know, to put an effort to keep each other, you know, happy, because maybe the other person may have stopped trying, you know, like just putting in that perspective.
But like, I mean, if they love each other, then wouldn't they keep trying? You know what I'm saying?
No, not necessarily, you know, because I feel like you can still love someone. Like you could have been with someone and like maybe the other person's not trying, you know. And because maybe that other person is going through like their own personal things, and maybe that person just isn't trying anymore because they are so focused on their own their issues, personal issues. And so like even if like that person still loves you, like maybe they just got a lot of funk that they got to work on, and then the person like who is trying, like sometimes you just got to understand like maybe that person just is not ready or is going towards a direction that's not including you. So sometimes you just have to make that decision for yourself, because you have to love yourself to make this decision that maybe it's just that time, you know. And like when you really love someone, you don't give up easily. But if it really gets you to that point where you do like feel like, oh dang, like this has really come to it, then it must have really come to it, you know.
Yeah, but also like if you really did love someone, wouldn't that mean that you would just like work it out? You know what I'm saying? Like to the other side of that like point that you're trying to make.
I think it just depends on how much you think the love is worth. I think everybody is different. Some people are willing to go through more pain to like get something to work. Some people don't, and like it's just the person's decision, you know. Because I can't speak for everybody, you know. Everybody's situation is different, but it just depends. I guess it just really depends on where you are in life, and if you know yourself enough to, or in like how long y'all been married or y'all been together, you know. It just is so much. There's not one definite answer to that. There's so many situations, and I'm not a definite answer ever. I'm always like, it just depends.
No, for sure. For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
It really depends. Yeah.
No, I feel that. So I mean, with that kind of like definition of like what love is, like how like people always try to find self-love, right? And you know, they go with like, this is from what I've seen, and they go out with their friends, hang out with their friends, you know, they go and they do all the like physical stuff that you talked about, but according to you, that's not self love,
Mhm.
right?
So when you say physical things, like what do you mean?
You know, like they go get a pedicure, or
Mhm.
like they go work out,
Mhm.
you know, or like they start eating healthier, things like that. Like,
Mhm.
do you think that that is still self-love then? Because like earlier you mentioned that, like, oh, like it doesn't, self-love doesn't just mean that you just go and get a massage. Like, yeah, you know,
Mhm. That's true.
it could mean that, but like that's not really what self-love is. So like, so
Mhm.
how, in your definition of love, with your definition of love and your context of self-love,
Mhm.
like how does one like reach to that point that you're kind of like talking about?
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, I believe like all those things that you talk about, really it is like self-care, and like it does embody self-love. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can't put that into like a way of living unless you get to that point where I said earlier, like where you can really know what your intentions are in life compared to other people's intention, like expectations for you, and like what other people are telling you what to do. And so you're asking like, how can you get to that point where you can isolate yourself and like find out who you truly are outside of it?
No, not like how do we get to that point, but like, do you? I was just I guess I was just asking if you think that those actions are a form of self love, or if
Oh,
not.
okay. Yeah, no, I definitely think it is. But I think that it people can try to do those things, but if you don't get your mental right, then it won't be as effective. Cuz some people can like do all those things and still
Mm-hmm.
not be happy with themselves. You can still
Right.
look into the mirror after you work out so much and still hate who you look, hate how you look. There's like the most handsome dudes ever and the most beautiful girls ever that
Mm-hmm.
they look like fine as hell, and like they're looking at themselves saying I'm ugly and fat. I'm like, what the? And like, okay, no lie, sometimes I used to do that so much too. You know, like
Uh-huh.
I was like one of those people where like people always say like you look good and stuff, and I'm just like I look at myself in the mirror and I just hated what I see.
Yeah.
So no matter, like, see, for personal experience for me too is like, no matter how much I worked out, I still did not love myself. You
Uh-huh.
know, and like it wasn't until I mentally corrected myself on how I viewed myself was when like working out made me feel good, and like eating right, you know, actually incorporating it into my lifestyle and not making it like, oh, I have to, you know, I have to do this in order to love myself, or I have to do this in order to look good, you know. Like
Mm-hmm.
having that want and like crave, like, oh, I have to is
Mm-hmm.
not self-love. That's still you wanting to please other people. Like, why do you have to do that? No, you don't. Like, do it for you. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
do it because you want to do it for you. Like, and
Right.
you want to be healthier, and you want to look good, and you want to shape your lifestyle around those things that is continuous self-love and continuous self-care, because you actually care now for who you are. You're not just doing it to have a nice booty shot for people to say, to like online, or like you're not just like eating healthy to gain attention from people like, oh wow, she's so healthy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you're actually just doing it because you're trying to incorporate it into your way of living. And like then when you start doing that, it's just like part of you, and it doesn't even feel like outside of you anymore, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
I feel that. So kind of like, to clarify your point is like, um, it really depends on the intention
Mhm.
of what, where you're going into.
Mhm.
Like, I guess to kind of like translate it in another way
Mhm.
is to say that you can't expect. So if I was to embark on a journey of self love
Mhm.
and be like, yeah, I'm gonna go find myself and like just love myself, like, you know,
Yeah.
forget all the girls out
Oh
there.
my
I'm just gonna go find myself,
god.
be a solo man, be single,
Oh
and like
my
kill it, you know.
gosh.
But and so like I start that mindset, and so like whatever I do it because like it's all just for self love. And so I think to kind of get to your point is like, you can't go out with your friends hoping that through that you'll find self-love, or like you'll acquire more points towards your self-love bar experience, you
Mhm.
know. um those actions do give you more self-love, but only if you started out with the intention of self-love. Does that make sense? So where I'm coming from is like, okay, so like I start my journey and I'll just go hang out with my friends, you know, because like to your point, I'm trying to avoid being lonely, and like I'm just hanging out with my friends. Like it's self-love, you know, like forget about girls. It's all about me and like me and my homies, and like I'm just living life. I'm coasting. And but that also could be toxic and damaging to yourself even more if you're not ready for that. But you know, some people put themselves in that situation thinking that, oh, this will help me get over that person or get over this hump or get over this threshold. And you know, but it doesn't. Is that what you're kind of saying as well?
I don't know. I feel like that might be a little bit different from what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
But I feel like just to branch off of what you were saying, I think that it is really healthy to have support and love from others who, like, after like you know, if you've broken up with someone and you're going through a hard time, I think it's really important to have a community. Like when I say community, I mean like just someone that you can depend on that can give you love and support at that time. Like just to be around too, like going out with friends and stuff. But you have to be really careful about which friends you go out with, because you have like, you know, party friends, and you have like okay, party friends could be genuine too, but like, you know, like there's certain actions that you do.
Trying to say about me?
no. Like certain actions you do when you're very heartbroken. You know, like very heartbroken. Like you have to really choose what you want to do, because it could make it worse. You know, like doing that every weekend could make it worse. Maybe going out once, like after you've broken up, like, oh, let's just go get a drink. Like that's cool, but when you start making that into a habit, you know, then that's not good for you. So I think like it's really important to like have friends that care about you and really want you to be better, you know?
Right.
So definitely I think that is a part of healing, and a part of self-love is to allow others to love you too, you know? And but then at the end of the day, they are not going to save you. They're not going to make you get over anyone. Like you have to take their love and support and like move yourself out of that space. You know, like it's always you're responsible for getting yourself out of that gunk. People are there to support you, but they can never hold your hand and like move you through every step of your process. It's you. It's you.
Yeah. Also, I kind of want to start moving towards like, you know, so people use that I wouldn't say it's an excuse. Like self-love is never an excuse. I also think it's super important, but sometimes people get to a point where they do end up using it as an excuse. Like self-love is super important, super key to your own health mentally, but sometimes people use it as like a barrier towards like, oh, I'm not going to expose myself again to the hurt that I experienced. And I think that that's not a good way of looking at self-love. Like self-love, you can have self-love and protect yourself, but like that doesn't mean that you can't open yourself up to another relationship down the road. If you happen to be single, you know. And to your point earlier on in the talk, I kind of want to bring it back in, is that like it's not the fact that like two perfect people are coming together. Like no one can be perfect. Like I can never be perfect. But it's two independent people, and I think that people always mix independent and perfect together, which I don't think really works. You know what I'm saying? Like just because you're independent doesn't mean that you're perfect.
No,
I mean, and I'm not saying like perfect for the other person that you want to go talk to, but like just perfect by yourself. Like you're always, no matter who you're with, there's always gonna be flaws within yourself, no matter what. Self-love is just the vehicle to help you find the person that you really empower you as well. That's what I think. I don't know. What do you think?
About like what exactly? What do you mean?
Like, do you think, like, what is the point at which stop focusing on, because this is something that's come up within a lot of people that I've been talking to and with, is that like
People use
there's
it as
a
an
point
excuse,
where
you said?
yeah, like at what point, if someone is really trying to, you know, flirt with you or like
Yeah.
really be your romantic lover,
Yeah.
and like at what point of self-love is it okay to like not go to the next level, but go back out in the open and just
Right.
like
True. Oh yeah, yeah.
play on
no.
the court, you know?
Right. You know, honestly, I don't know if that's really what self-love means, like to protect yourself from hurt, you know? Like,
Right.
for me, I feel like that's really not. I think that's just your own insecurity of like being hurt again. And like, that's just fear. I feel like it's just fear.
Oh yeah.
Because I feel
That's
like if you
interesting.
really love yourself, then you wouldn't fear loving another person. You know, like if you've reflected enough. Well, you know what? I think that you will always have those like things in the back of your mind, like, oh, like what if I get hurt again? You know, of course, it's natural as a human being to be afraid.
Right.
But like if someone, like if you're trying to like find someone, you know, after you've you know, you've been doing self reflection and like and filling yourself up with more love, healthy love for yourself and like from others who are healthy for you, who are not romantic. I think if you find the right person, it shouldn't be scary. Like you should not want to, like there's probably fear, but like if you've talked about it and like just the way you feel about someone, like it should not be fearful, you know? Like you should not, that should not be like the main thing that you think about if you really want to be with someone.
Right.
And if you're fearful, even if that person's the right one, then you have to go back and reflect on why you're so fearful. You're like, maybe you haven't worked through certain things in your life yet, like where you're still holding on to this trauma that you've had with the past person that you were with. Then that must mean that you still got more work to do, you know? And like if you really care, like love this person, you can't be with them because you are still dealing with things, and that's your own personal thing, like that you have to go back and reflect on. But if you've already, like if you've built a lot of self-love for yourself, and like, you know, I don't know, I just don't think you should be fearful of flirting or like being around like for me personally, like just speaking for me, right, like for example, like I don't know, like for me, I don't feel like I want to be with anyone romantically right now.
Sure.
And like I think it's just because I think I realized that it wasn't romantic love I was seeking for all my life. It was just like real love, like just from the people around me, you know? Like I just really wanted to be loved by like the people that matters to me. And so I think that I just tried to seek that in romantic partners. But I think as I'm growing up now, I'm starting to learn how to, you know, form those healthy relationships with the people around me that I want to be loved by. And like it's starting to show a little bit more day and day, and it makes me feel really good, and it makes me feel loved, you know? And like that's the kind of love that I want to focus on right now, like familial love and like friendship love, because I think that romantic love is like, it is, I earlier I said it's fake or whatever.
Right.
Like I didn't say it was fake, but it's like a very false idea. Like people think that you can just achieve romance right at the first level. That's
Right.
not true. For me,
Right.
I think romantic love, it's such a high type of love. It is really high up there, because you don't just love romantically with everybody. You know, you can give love to like a lot of people, you know, like, but then like romance is like, usually, you know, it's like one person that you really, really love in that way. So like you cannot really achieve that romantic love just like on the first level. I feel like you have to build friendship, build trust, and then like it can lead to romance afterwards. So that's why for me, I'm not worried about romance, because like I've realized like back then I put myself in romantic relationships with people I never trusted, or people I never even really knew, you know, like you kind of just like, you know them for like a month and you're like, okay, let's date. And then they say, I love you. Like, I guess I love you too. Like, you know, you're just like young and dumb, and you're just like kind of going with things, and you're like, I guess I love you. But like, as I reflect now, I'm like, yeah, that was not love. Like, I think it honestly took me like a year or two to actually love that person. you know,
Oh,
because I
okay.
didn't really even know them like that. So for me,
Right.
like, I'm just worried about right now, like, building good relationships with people. And if, like, that were, like, you know, whoever I love, you know, whether they
Mhm.
are, like, a man or woman or, you know, whoever, like, I want to make sure that we can be friends first. Like, it's just like, I don't know, I just feel like if you stick around long enough to be my friend, then that must mean that you actually really care for me. If someone like who really love me, or like they say they just want to be romantic with me right there and then, like, and then, like, if I don't want to be romantic with them, they leave, and that just shows kind of who they are, you know.
Right.
And I know that some people, like, are in different stages in life where they're trying to find someone to love, blah blah blah. But for me, like, I don't want to rush it anymore. I want to make sure, like, this person is someone that I click well and, like, can be with me for a lifetime. You know, it's not just a fast, like, infatuation, quick thrill kind of thing that's always, like, promoted in movies and stuff. Like, it just don't, and it happens for some people, but, like, I
Right.
feel like a lot of times you really love a person after, like, years, you know. You realize you want to be with someone after years, you know. So
Okay.
it's just kind of like my way of seeing it. And, like, I don't know if I'm answering the question, because I always forget because I always strive out, and I'm like, wait, what was the question again? Oh my gosh, I'd be striving up to the other
No.
side.
No, but you say a lot of things that I think that people think differently on, right? Because, like, right, you just said that, like, it's gonna take years to, like,
Maybe it's just me.
you
It's
know,
just me,
and
though.
it's just like, you know, some people are gonna be like, okay, that's just you, right there, exactly
That
what
could
you
just
just
be
said.
me.
They're gonna
It
say
could
that
just
to
be
you
me,
right
yeah.
now,
Could just be me.
but you know, it's like totally. I think it obviously varies from person to person, just like what you said. Like, it definitely does vary from person to person, and what they believe love is. You know, like, for you, like, you believe that love is this way, like, and from what your own experiences. You know, like, I have my own belief about what love is too. You know, and it's just like what I believe and what you believe may not be true, but there's some objective truth about love, you know. And, like, I don't know where I'm going to now. I'm just like I'll get lost in the
I know.
sea.
It's like, what is the question again? I was like,
I don't even remember.
what was the question?
But, like,
It was like discerning something. I don't remember.
yeah. I don't know. I do think, though, that, like, for me, love it's a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of things. But I think, oh yeah, this is the original question. Like, what does it boil down to? Like, what does love boil down to? Like, I think that was the original question.
No.
But for me, I think what love boils down to is ultimately a choice. That doesn't mean that, like, love doesn't go through phases. You know, like,
Oh, I know your question. You remember people making excuses for self-love.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
People
People they make excuses like,
to
oh, I
not
don't
be
want
with
to.
someone.
Yeah, because of right, the insecurities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that's a little bit true. You know, like, don't get self-love mixed with your insecurities.
Yeah.
Like, definitely don't
Yeah.
do that. But it takes a lot of, like what you said, self-awareness, self-reflection, to really differentiate that for yourself. You know, like, I recently just got some people would say recently. I don't think it's that recent. It's been about, like, 6 months now,
Okay.
since I broke up with my ex. I think that's a long time, but some people would be like, wow, that's so short. Like, you know, and it all depends on how people recover and things like that, and that's really fine. But, like, just because I broke up with my ex pretty recently, I suppose, that doesn't mean that you know, I'm all about self-love for sure, but that doesn't mean I use self-love to be like, oh, I don't want to talk to this new girl that I think shows interest in me, you know. And to your point, I think that, like, people are, like, super insecure, you know, or we're not even, like, insecure, but like people are like so afraid to be that vulnerable. And I feel like if you like, self-love doesn't stop your fears, but like self-love is so similar to like self-love builds courage. That's what I think.
It does. It does.
You know, courage amongst a lot of other things, you know, but like courage is not like being able to not be fearful anymore. Like real courage.
You're always scared when you have courage, though.
Yeah. Like you can still be scared and be fearful even if you have courage. Like courage is not like, oh,
I have no fears.
yeah, it's courage does not equal, or it's not congruent to having no fear.
Yeah.
You know, courage is having the strength to fight your fears and not overcome them. Eventually you will overcome your fears if you continually build your courage and just keep holding on to your courage. But like courage is the strength to fight and interact with your fears. You know, and some people would say, well, then you're not being afraid anymore. Well, you are still afraid. You just have the strength to go fight them. It's like a bully, you know, just because you're about to go fight the bully that's been bullying you, doesn't mean that you're not afraid that you're going to get beat. Like, you know, you could still get beat, but like,
you got to stand up.
Yeah.
Some
That,
way.
you know, you have the courage to go stand up in front of him. And I think that if you've built up enough self-love, then courage will naturally come with it, and like you wouldn't be afraid to let someone in anymore. And if it doesn't work out and you have another heartbreak, like I think this is where people also tend to mix self-love with romantic love, or like maybe they never really had self-love in the first place. Was that like, oh, okay, so like I break up, I go do my self-love, and then I find another partner, and then after I break up with this new partner, I'm just as devastated as I was with the second ex. It's like you shouldn't be that. If you develop self-love after you break up with your new ex, you should be in a place of more, like you should be more comfortable still. Like, yeah, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna suck. Like whenever you break up, it always sucks. But like I don't think that self-love should always go down when you're in a relationship. Like that, it doesn't match. You know.
Definitely.
Like you shouldn't replace your self-love with the love of someone else. Like that, it really shouldn't be like that. That's not healthy. It's not, because like if you do that in the relationship, then like it almost equates to you losing yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like you losing your identities and like who you were as you were single and when you're together. Like there's going to be things that you do when you're with someone that's different from when you're single, like clearly, but that doesn't mean that you replace every part of you for the parts of the person. You know.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I definitely agree with the things that you say, that you know you have to have a certain level of self-love for yourself, and I think it fluctuates through life, but I feel like it boils down to like your sense of self. You know, we talked about this yesterday at my workshop, where self is different from identity. You know, how like identity is like all the things that have been projected onto you as you grow up, like you know, being a girl or boy, being Asian, being black, being, you know, a different ethnicity. Like those are like identities that you hold, like being a girlfriend, you know, being a wife, being a father. Those things are identities that aren't the self. And the self is like, when you say, you know, self-love, that means actually loving the self and not putting any attachment to any identity that you are.
Yeah.
So when you say self-love, it means you are solely just loving the self, like who you are, with no attachment to anything. And so if people lose that sense of self and they continue over life, keep losing it, that means they're not grounded in who they truly are. And then they have to really connect to that. That's what I was talking about yesterday, really grounding it to everybody there. Like, you need to really know that you, the self, can navigate through all these identities. All these identities in truth do not make you who you are. You make these identities happen. You know, you are not these identities. These identities are not you. Like, you are these identities. Like, you are what brings life into being. Like, for me, like, among women, a daughter, a sister, I breathe life into that. That does not breathe life into me. I was born before I was even named those things, you know. I was already existing in the womb, and you didn't even know what gender I was, so you could not have made me a sister already or a daughter already. You didn't even know my gender. So some people aren't ready for that truth, but you know, that's just what has helped me to really embark on this journey that I am going for myself. And doesn't mean I'm excluding everybody around me. I love everyone, and I'm doing my best to be connected with people. But I also have to create really strong boundaries so I can know who am I outside of all these expectations, all these roles that I am doing. How can I navigate the self in all of these? And I think that's why some people fall into cycles again, because I've been one of those people who fall into cycles over and over, allowing these identities to rule me, being a good girlfriend, you know, like that was the main one. Like, you are so caught up in trying to be a good girlfriend that you are not actually being your real self, you know. And so in order for you to actually be in a good, healthy relationship where you can actually be yourself, you have to really dig deep about who you truly are, and like make healthy boundaries around people to really know yourself, you know. And like, you know, that's so cliche, know yourself. But then I hope that it gets across that for me personally, like, I don't want to be in a relationship because I tend to do that when I'm in a relationship. Like, I start to lose myself. I start to want to like be what this person wants me to be. I tend to like do too much, and like, if this person want to do something, I will do that. If this person want me to do this or do that, be that, I will do that, because I want to make that person happy. That's just the kind of person I am. Like, I want to make the person I'm with happy. But then like, that must mean that I have to create like boundaries in order to really know who I am as the self, and then doing it as the self for the person I'm like, to make them happy, not like just losing my like all my old self and just kind of like throwing myself, like praising this person, like doing everything they want, you know. So like, if you feel like you're always losing yourself, that means you have to reflect back and like think about who you are. And it doesn't mean that you don't want love, but you have to think about yourself first, because then you will be hurting yourself and you'll be hurting the person that you're with, because usually the people that don't really know who they are, they're always breaking up with the person. And I did that, you know, and I hurt a lot of people, and I hurt myself too, you know, because I'm always like feeling really trapped because I don't have any idea who I am. I'm just like trying to be this person for this person, you know. So I think if that's how you're feeling, really lost, and like you're just like doing what the other person wants you to be and do, then like you got to just step back and like, again, create those healthy boundaries to know like who you are, and like go and reflect on yourself until you find what the self is for you.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. No, I totally agree, but I think people are, I think some people might have a disagreement.
Yeah. What do you think the disagreement may be?
About what is the self and identity. I think that is where people always like, they're always like confused. I don't want to say they are always confused, but I think that's where confusion happens a lot. I mean, even myself, when you asked me that question yesterday, I was like, oh, I've never really thought about it like in those two words. So I like to think of myself as like a translator. So like, you and I could believe in the same thing, but we use different words to say the same thing. And so let me try to translate what you said, or maybe even clarify, is that like what you said, the self is like, it's gonna sound a bit confusing, but the self is you as the body, as yourself, as the individual, as a human being that can think, that has a beating heart, all the facts. You being Hmong is not a fact. Like, that is it's a social construct. Like, people could look at me and be like, oh, you must be Chinese, or like, you must be Korean. Obviously you're Asian, so like, but you look Chinese. And I was like, I'm not Chinese, I'm not Korean. Those are identities. I would say that I'm Hmong, but I don't really know that I'm Hmong. Like, who are Hmong people? And people are gonna be like, Hmongya Hmonga, and it's like, we're just Hmong, and it's like, we're a part of the culture. And obviously culture is a social construct. It's not a fact. Me being here is a fact. Me thinking and talking and making noise and living is a fact. Me being a human is a fact. Like, my example yesterday is like, oh, I think you're wearing the same scarf too.
Oh,
maybe?
yep, I am.
So you have a red scarf on.
Uh-huh.
So everybody that's not watching, City has a red scarf on, right? Fact, it's a scarf. What's not a fact, that it's red. Because what if I was colorblind? Then to me, that could look brown or green, or it could be a shade of gray. Like, that's the power of perspective. And that's what an identity is. It's me calling City's scarf red, but it's still just a scarf. And so self is basically you the person. And then to clarify what you're kind of saying is that all these identities, like, you latch onto yourself, like being the daughter, being the sister, the girlfriend, the the caretaker, all these things. And like, you might like some of these things, but that doesn't mean that those things make who you are. You breathe life into those labels. Like, and I totally agree, because like, even as like a sister or even as a brother, like, you could be the best brother or the worst brother. What makes a good and a bad brother? It's the fact that I'm breathing life into that label. Like, I could be the best brother because I'm putting life into that label, right? But I feel that I do think that people have to find who they are outside of their identities. Yeah, because like, to your point about self-love and those identities, like, if you break up with your first ex and you go on the self-love things, it should really be about you, not the identity of like, I'm single now, right? Because being single is an identity. Like, technically speaking, everybody is a single being. Like, I'm not you, you're not me. We can never be joined together. Like,
physically, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think even spiritually, I don't think we could be like I think we latch on to parts of each other, but like, I never think that we can morph into one being,
That's true. I mean, if we're talking about spiritual stuff, I don't know. That's
I don't want to
get. Yeah,
I don't want to get.
That's
too
a different
deep
topic.
I don't really want to get into deep into that, but like, you can never, theoretically, at least for me speaking, everybody is a single person. It just happens to be that these two single people made a choice to always be close to each other and not to like, break boundaries or whatever that make the other person feel uncomfortable. And when you break up with your first ex, don't live self-love through being single. I'm gonna find self-love. It should be the vice versa.
You can self-love being with someone,
Yeah, it should be vice versa. I'm gonna get self-love and be single.
And like, you did bring something up in my mind when you were talking about what you feel like all the labels and stuff,
Yeah.
like what you were just talking about, how like you aren't it, like, I want to I want to make like a note that like I think it's really important to accept your identity, because like what I've been saying is like they aren't you, you are it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You have to accept them though. Like sometimes you won't be able to run away from your identities. They are a part of you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say that, finding yourself outside of the labels, it does not mean to ignore them, because that's not
totally.
what I mean by that. I'm just saying don't form an unhealthy attachment to your identity, but you have to live through the identity, because you are born here for a reason, to be that identity through this world.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say these things without going deep, because that's just the person I am. So like, for me, I just feel like it's not a mistake that I was born Hmong woman and into my family for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I can't run away from being a woman. I can't run away from being Hmong. And like, some people embrace it fully when they are born. They embrace Hmong identity. They embrace being a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and I think those are the people where I would say, like, you love it so much, but just remember that it does not define you. Like, you have to understand, like, you are not, like, you are something before that. So just do not get so caught up in the identities. But like me on the other side, like, I try to run away from all those identities so much that I've started to feel really disconnected with like my body. Like, for me, I believe that I have a soul. Like, everybody has a soul. That's just my perspective. And that like you have like, kind of like mind, body, and soul, kind of like that. Like, I just feel really disconnected, like soul and body, where I'm trying to run away from all these identities, because I just like the way I see things, like, oh, I just hate all these like social social constructs, and like all these roles. Like, I just hate all that stuff, like why society has to create all these roles for us. I'm going to run away from it. But then like when I try to do that, like it just kind of gave me a confliction, because I started to realize as I was growing up, like, oh, like I was born to be this way for a reason. So
Mm-hmm.
on the other side, I had to come to embrace like being Hmong, because I hated being Hmong for a long time. I hated being a woman for a long time. But once I started to embrace those identities of mine, then I started to have a clearer view of actually the self, which is interesting, because but I have to understand too, like, but it's not about being those like forming like, oh, I am just this person, like, I am just Hmong, like, it's not about being them, but it's about embracing them and like carrying them forward to make you like yourself, I guess. So being able to embrace all your identities. So I just wanted to make that clear, that like, don't run away from it. I'm not telling you to look at yourself like outside of like, like completely like unattached or anything,
Right.
because you have to attach yourself to identities in a healthy way in order to navigate this world, because then you just be like an empty body with nothing like
Right.
that you can connect to.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, so I'm saying that like, see yourself outside of those labels, but also like be able to navigate through those labels and like embrace it, because that it is, you are it, you are those identities when you breathe life into it.
Cool.
That's all.
All right. Well,
self-love.
yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's a good note to like stop on.
Mm-hmm.
So before we end, where can people find you?
Mm-hmm.
What are your social media handles?
Yeah, so I am active on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I have my blog as well. So like I'm very like I feel like Facebook is like really popular for me. So like all my stuff should be on Facebook. Like if you go through my blog, like all my like social media is on there, and it's just Wabi space Sabi, WABI space SABI. And this year I'm really focusing on, like, I've been doing a lot of women empowerment stuff, writing and hosting workshops and stuff like that. But this year I really want to focus on my creative content, like my poetry. I want to start making music this year, really to try to connect with people. That's really my purpose, like to really connect with people and relate with them, and like just encourage people to be authentic, be their real self, and just realize that we're all not perfect and we can always be better the next day. I'm just waiting for my process to happen with music, and so a lot of stuff is going to come out on YouTube and SoundCloud this year, but it's also a process that I have to be patient on doing.
For sure. All right, well, you know where to find me, guys. At TabooTalks on every platform. YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, etc., etc. And yeah, well, I'm glad you all, if you guys made it to the end of the episode, thank you guys. I appreciate you all listening in and watching, depending on what platform you're viewing this on. But until next time, everyone.
This message is prohibited.